You know, Epiphany is the primary Christmas celebration where I'm from. In Puerto Rico, Epiphany is the celebration. I mean, we have this 25th thing going on.
It's bigger than Christmas?
It's bigger than Christmas. And on a night like tonight, little children will go to their backyards and gather grass and water. I mean, the camels have to eat, right? And then the three kings.
Wait, you guys really put out grass?
No, that's for real. For real. We put out grass and water for the three kings. And the three kings come tonight and leave you gifts.
That's why you liked it.
That's why I loved it. In fact, the best gifts were given during that celebration. I mean, the 25th, you would get like clothes and things like that. What kid likes that? But the three kings, they will give you...
Where do they put the gifts? In the living room or in your bed?
No, this is the other cool trick by the three kings. This is why they were always smarter than Santa Claus. Santa Claus leaves you gifts under the tree, but the three kings leave them by your bed.
They're as good as the Tooth Fairy.
They are better
than the Tooth Fairy. Wow.
So, as a child, I always loved these three wise men who came from the east. At first, of course, because they left me really cool gifts, but as I got older and began to get to know the story a bit more and began to get deeply into the story, then it's one of the great fantastical stories in all of the Gospels. You have a tyrannical king, and you have this strangers from the east who bring gifts. You have this young mom, Mary, and this child. And you have
like a movie.
It's like a movie. And this evil king tells these wise men to let me know where this child is so I can pay him homage.
Yeah, he sent them to get intel.
That's right.
He wants to kill the child.
So this is like a high-power story. But this year it's been interesting. I've been reflecting so much, not so much about that action sequence, but about this idea that these wise ones, by the way, we think there's three of them because there's three gifts, but the Bible doesn't tell us how many there were. In fact, most likely these emissaries came from this ancient kingdom. There were probably 8 to 12 of them, if not more, who were sent to visit this king that had been born. But I was thinking about those ancient ones who were watching the stars and how they knew something that Herod should have known. In this story, we have a reversal again, where the foreigners and the strangers...
Yeah, they're non-Jewish.
They're non-Jewish. They know something, and yet Herod doesn't remember. By the way, Herod was really not a good guy. But what's amazing is the chief priest didn't remember. The pastors of the day.
Be careful.
Be careful. We might not know anything today. The scribes, the teachers of the law didn't remember.
So the official experts didn't know. Foreigners knew something.
These foreigners knew something. They have been expectant. So I'm wondering in this new year, am I missing something? In the midst of being so deeply ingrained in this great story of faith, am I missing something? Am I forgetting
Almost
something?
for sure we're missing something.
That's
like
right.
when you're embedded in your own culture,
Yeah.
it's like your own living room. You don't see it anymore.
That's right. It becomes so part of your life. But
outsiders.
Yeah. So if you go, so I'm thinking about what do the outsiders know? What do these folks in the margin know? What kind of manifestation of God are they experiencing? What kind of good news are they rehearsing? What kind of love incarnate are they embodying? And maybe this year, I'm wondering if I should spend a little more time on those outskirts and experiencing this manifestation of God's love in powerful ways. Maybe these foreigners, these strangers, these unknown ones, these forgotten ones, these ignored ones, these pushed away ones, maybe they're the ones who have something for me this year so that I can experience love like I've never experienced it before.
Yeah, we almost always just listen to insiders, don't we?
We have a
People-
tendency to do that.
People think are in the know or have the power.
Yeah. The flashiness,
Yeah.
the obvious. We forget the edges.
So if we're going to look for a manifestation of God, I get caught between thinking God will arrive in big, flashy, mystical, supernatural events, but other times thinking God is in the banal, mundane aspects of the everyday, and I sort of go back and forth.
Yeah, in fact, these ancient wise ones went to Jerusalem because isn't that the obvious place where a king
The
would be
holy
born?
city,
The
yeah.
holy city, the
King
palace is
David's.
there. King David's city. Bethlehem?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Like, that's crazy. No, nothing good comes out of Bethlehem.
So you're asking us to be attuned in a different way to where we might see God.
I'm hopeful that this year, maybe you'll join me in looking at the edges and seeing what God might be up to there.
You know, as Pastor JC speaking to us, I'm thinking of all those joining us on live stream, and he's speaking to you too about new ways you might experience the divine in your life, new voices we should be listening to.
New places where God might be found.
So my 24-year-old just moved to Palm Beach. And he's been there a couple months, and he's not sure he likes it much. His comment is they're not as nice as Midwesterners. He feels like it's a different kind of culture down there. But he's finding his way. He's getting into scuba diving, and the beaches and scuba stuff is great there. He also found out that Palm Beach, oddly enough, has a spectacular chess club. And he loves chess. And the chess club will play out on the street outside the nightclubs, like on a Saturday night on the main drag, because you can play from like 7 to 11 p.m., and it's perfect weather. And he says it's a great club. And he had an amazing experience last week. One of the top child prodigies in chess is in Palm Beach to train. It's a Russian, an 11-year-old, and he's the prodigy. And there's a lot of money in chess in Russia, and so they're over in Palm Beach training. And my son says the Russian dad is a little bit of an oddball, but they're all. The chess club was set up. He brought that 11-year-old prodigy down to the sidewalk outside the nightclub. The chess club set up 10 boards around him. He sat the 11-year-old in a chair, blindfolded him. My son got to be one of the boards sitting around him, and that 11-year-old played all 10 games simultaneously blindfolded. They just would call out the moves, and he would call out each move blindfolded in his mind. And I asked my son, what was it like to play someone that good? And he said, he just cut through me like I was nothing. I mean, chess has prescribed opening moves, so after the first set of 15 or so moves, that guy just overtook him immediately. Won all 10 boards. Sometimes I get a sense with a text like this that there's a greater intelligence at play.
Yeah.
And I almost feel swept away. When you read the Three Kings story on so many different levels, it's like a greater mind has offered us this, and there's so many insights you can find in it. Let me share just a couple.
Yeah.
Do you play chess, by the way?
No.
Yeah. I played as a kid. I don't play anymore.
I wouldn't even know where to start.
Okay. In my imagination, the three kings, or the three wise men,
Yeah, the three wise ones, yeah.
are really frustrated. You see, they've been following the star to their true destination diligently. They've shown such devotion and focus. They followed that star to their true destination. But then in our nativity scenes, we put them by the manger. I bet this really ticks them off. That wasn't their destination. Look in your hand. This is a story about three wise men that come to a house and enter the house. It's only in the Gospel of Luke that you have a Christ child in the manger. There's no wise men. It's shepherd and angels in the Gospel of Luke. In Matthew, this is its own amazing story.
Yeah.
And they've come to a house. And by the way, in Matthew, it's not a baby, it's probably a toddler. It looks like he would have been around 2 years old. Herod was going to go after every child 2 years old and under.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I love this image of the three wise men giving homage to a toddler, which is a great...
I mean, toddlers are little tyrants anyway.
Yes, they are.
So
Yes,
maybe that fits.
They think they're king.
They
for
think
sure.
they're king, so...
I love this image, but we put the wise men at the nativity scene by the manger. Now, that's completely just an act of imagination.
Holy imagination.
But I love that. I mean, we should be imaginative.
Yes.
And so we create that scene around them. And even now, people in their own nativity scenes at home, they add things like little Star Wars figures or little things, because you should think of everyone gathering around Christ.
Yeah, that ancient practice of personifying that manger scene to each of us.
Yeah, you should make a little figurine of yourself and put it there. That's the point of the story.
Yeah.
We all gather around the Christ. So if you look really closely at our nativity scenes, completely an act of imagination, two stories merged, sometimes you'll notice one of the three wise men is a black guy. Do you remember seeing that when you really look? And that's completely an act of the imagination. The Bible doesn't tell us what ethnicities the wise men are. It says they came from the east, but who knows? But I love this act of imagination. You see, in the Middle Ages, that black wise men began to appear because the idea was all the nations are gathering around Jesus. Europe, Asia, sometimes one of the wise men is Asian.
Yeah.
Europe, Asia, and Africa, all gathering around it becoming a worldwide faith.
A cosmic, universal faith.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that. But do you want to know what's even a bigger act of the imagination? If you look at our nativity scenes, that black guy is looking down at a little white baby. That's completely an act of the imagination.
That's an imagination.
Jesus wasn't white.
No.
In fact, the whole scene is non-white people, obviously, right? So it's completely this made-up thing that we got this little Anglo baby in the manger. But this can be a wonderful thing. As an act of faithful imagination, Martin Luther said, we can't draw Jesus too deeply into our own flesh.
Oh.
And so people all over the world imagine Jesus looking like them.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful act of imagination. If you go to Africa, it's a black baby. If you go to Asia, it's an Asian little baby. You can see Jesus portrayed in all ways. Like in Native American tribes, you'll see Jesus in a full headdress, and that's wonderful. We're trying to be Christ-like, to imagine ourselves, Christ in our flesh. That's awesome. If you know it's an act of imagination. If you don't, and you think Jesus is really a little Anglo baby, then it seems kind of weird, like it's an act of white supremacy or something, to think that's real.
Or that that's the only way.
Or the only way.
The only expression of divine life in the world.
That's the point. Yeah, so we have a Jesus statue in the back.
Nordic? Is that like a Nordic
Jesus? I was going to ask them what they thought they were. Yeah, it's an Icelandic Jesus. If you look, so you may not know that, but it's an artist in Iceland that we commissioned for that bronze. And clearly his features are kind of Nordic European.
Except that he's greenish.
The patina, he looks a little green.
It's like Hulk Jesus.
Definitely. The patina on the bronze.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I always had a dream, though, since we have an Icelandic Jesus, that we would have two beautiful portraits on each side of the Jesus, one like maybe a African Jesus and one from another culture, just to show that, because that's what this story is really trying to say.
Cosmic significance of this child.
That's what this story is about.
Yeah.
So, lastly, this year, I'm sensing something else in this story, this divine intelligence behind this story. I'm seeing in the wise men an act of moral resistance. That's what I'm really feeling at this moment.
Herod.
Yeah, well, they were told by Herod, to case out the scene and take. They're courtiers. Their job is to get information to a king.
That's right.
But they come into this house of this poor family. So, I mean, they're kind of aristocratic, right?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
They come into the house and they see this poor family in this shack of a home.
Yeah.
And I think something ignited their conscience. I mean, their whole job is to follow what a king wants. But their conscience becomes animated.
They had a dream, and they heard God, the God of Israel,
Which is the
speaks to them.
Which our conscience is how
Yeah.
God speaks to us.
So all of a sudden, this God that they might not have even ever known speaks to them and awakens them.
And so they endanger their own lives not following the king's orders. They decide it's not right to expose this vulnerable poor family to the iron fist of power. I think this moment of moral resistance inspires me. And I've been wondering, who or what is my King Herod? Because something will have power over me that I need to resist.
Yeah.
Who or what is my King Herod? I mean, sometimes I think even my own emotions have too much power over me.
Yeah.
And if I'm angry or depressed or anxious, that I'll act out in morally sideways manner. And sometimes maybe I'm giving my emotions too much authority.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing in this story now, something has power over you. Something is a tyranny over your life. What is it for you? I know a lot of us struggle with addictions. Man is at a tyrannical power over you, and you get to a point you can't manage your life, and then there comes a moment where you have to reclaim that center and resist that addiction and get sober. And what has power over you?
Some of those ideologies.
Oh, ideologies.
Yeah.
So even our ideas or conceptions, we give it too much power.
Too much. We think those are it. That's it. That's God.
And
that
it's
has
not.
power. And it's not.
Who or what is your King Herod that you need to resist? I think sometimes culture itself, with all its conforming pressures, I mean, you're a completely unique person. You should live life your own unique way, but there's this conforming pressure to match some categories or grooves that you're supposed to follow. Culture can have too much power.
Yeah.
There's a phrase that Augustine uses a lot. Augustine, the great theologian and teacher of the church, incurvatus in se. Incurvatus in se, he's referring to how sometimes human beings curve inward. Their whole life becomes about themselves or their own perspectives. Incurvatus in se for him is the basic sin. We become self-involved. He thought as Christians, we should live with an outward view, to serve others, to try to come to know God, to have active imagination outward. But incurvatus in se is when you're completely self-focused. So sometimes I wonder if my King Herod is me.
Yeah.
If things become about me, maybe that's the tyranny. This story's got a lot in it.
Well, it's that prayer. So I've been thinking a lot about what does it look like to pay attention to the manifestation. And sometimes when we're so much in ourselves, we no longer see. This is what Jesus constantly tells us, that we are blind if we think we see, but if we recognize we don't see, we actually can see. And so I think my prayer for us this Epiphany season is that we look up and get beyond that inner stuff, that hyper-focused navel gazing, and that we begin to see the manifestation of God in neighbor, within ourselves. We see the manifestation of God. Everywhere where there's love and freedom, there is love, there is God.
If you encounter the manifestation of the divine, that pulls you out of yourself.
That's
what
right.
it does.
That's right. So that's my prayer this Epiphany season, that we're pulled beyond ourselves and that we begin to get beyond the tyranny of that self and we begin to live a life of love, of neighbor, of cooperation, of community, of kinship. That's a manifestation that I want to experience this year.
Amen to that.
Amen.